Okay, so go everyone, welcome back to another fly tying tutorial. So in this tutorial we're just doing up a relatively simple, I suppose, hackled nymph. This one's a Heron and Starling, and it's pretty straightforward. It can be a little bit tricky, but we'll get into it and see how it goes. So to start with, I'm using a pupa hook, Dahuku pupa in size 14, and once I get my hands on it, just a tungsten countersunk bead. I do these with gold beads, but you could probably do it with silver beads, or even just try any other bead itself. But I use these with gold beads. So the first thing I'm going to do is put a little bit of body behind the bead, and to do that I'm just using some stretch material, and I'm just going to come in and catch that on, and I'm just going to run backwards and forwards with a few layers just to build a little bit of a taper up behind the bead, and then also to take some of the mass out of it. So I'm not using thread or anything to try and take up the taper. So I don't know, half a dozen layers, I guess, whatever sort of work with the size bead that you're using, and all I'm going to do is just do that taper up, help fix that bead into place, and then whip finish with a couple of turns and take that stretch material away. So then the next thread I'm just using some nano silk, some Simplify nano silk, and I'm just going to catch that on, and I'm just going to come down, tying in that tag end, and then trim away the waist. And then about at the back here of where I've used that stretch material, I'm going to catch in the rib. Now for the rib, I'm just using some monofilament, just some fine tippet material, I don't know, 6-7 by something like that. And I'm just going to catch that in with a few turns, and then I'm going to double the waist piece back over and tie both ends down to where I want to finish. Now I don't want to go too far. I don't want to come too far around the bend with this, because I'm going to put a tail on it, and I want the tail to sort of stay fairly flat against, or in line with the rest of the body, even though I'm using a pupa hook. So I'm not going to go too far. I'm just going to come in, I'm going to trim away the tag end of that monofilament, another turn or two to tidy it up, and then I'm just going to push that out of the way. So for the tail, I'm using some speckled Coq de Leon hen fibres, some of the big webby big feathers out the back, flank feathers. You could use whatever you like. I just happen to be using this, and so I'm just going to go with half a dozen or so fibres and line up the tips and tear them away from the feather. Now the tail, I'm looking at probably around about the body length, something along those lines, and I'm just going to catch that in with a couple of turns, and then one in underneath the tail, just to pull it back up in line a bit, and then tie the rest of that in. And I'm just going to tie that in until I get up to sort of where I was using the body stretch, and then trim away that waist. I don't want to tie it all the way down, otherwise it'll create too much of a bump for me. Quickly tidy that up. So the body for this is Heron. You could use goose, you could use turkey, whatever you've got. I use Heron, and I'm using picric dyed Heron, so you can see it's picric dyed. Now, depending on what quality of Heron you've got or materials you've got, you can do this all in one wrap, I guess you could say, or you might have to do a couple of slips. My Heron is a little bit short, so I'll probably have to do a couple of slips. But if you've got long fibres, then just tie them in and wrap them up, and you'll be right. So I'm just going to come in now. It's important to, when you're looking at your feather, you want to tie it in so that the back of the feather, the concave side of the feather, is facing you when you tie it in. So then when you wrap it, you end up with the fibrous or the sort of the matter coloured part coming out. So I'm just going to catch that in by the tips there and tie that in. Now I'll probably get about half the fly out of this. So just so that I don't keep bouncing the thread around, I'm just going to do a quick half hitch there, and then go in and start wrapping the herl. Now I'm reverse wrapping this so that when I rib it with the monofilament, it's easier to wrap the monofilament normally than it is to counter wrap it, or at least to anchor it off. So I'm reverse wrapping this heron, and just taking my time. It can be a little bit delicate. You sort of got to get all fingers involved, and I'm just taking my time and wrapping it and trying to keep that heron so that the right side faces out as I wrap up. So I'll probably get another turn maybe up here, and then I'm going to have to catch that in. Oh, slipped. Catch that in. Too many fingers involved. And then trim away that waste piece. And then go back to my feather and cut away another 3 or 4 fibres. Line up those tips there, and then come back in and capture them back in at the start point there. Tie those down, and I should get all the way to the bead with this, so we'll just run that thread to the bead and then just carry on wrapping that heron all the way through. Like I said, if you've got nice long fibres, then you might get all the way up. And also, I suppose, if you decide to tie this on a smaller bead, these are a smaller hook. These are 14s. You know, if you went to a 16, you probably get all the way up the hook with one slip of herls. But we'll get to this. So up to the bead, a couple of turns to lock that in. Okay, and then I'm just going to come in. I'm going to trim away the waist now. I want to be reasonably close to the body. So to rib it, all we're doing is bringing this monofilament up the same way we would if we were, using wire. And I'm just going to, over the top, open turns. Really, what we're doing here with this monofilament is 2 things. First and foremost, we're just protecting that herl and locking it down. Second of all, the monofilament will just provide a little bit of sort of shine in the water as you get some light bouncing off it. Not too much, just a little bit. So a few turns to lock that down, and then I'm just going to trim away the waist. So the hackle for this, I'm using Starling. Now, what I've got here is a semi-bleached Starling. So it's a bit bashed around, as you can see, because it's been picked over, but it's semi-bleached. I'll see if I can get some of the glare out of it. Now I've just semi-bleached this using hair bleach, blonde bleach, and then just sort of left it on for a period of time and then washed it off before it's completely bleached, washed it out. And so what you get is these soft Starling feathers that, try to get in the photo, that are this sort of coffee brown colour as opposed to the darker colours you normally get on the naturals. You get this more warmer brown, coffee brown sort of colours. Bit of a blend. It's still got a little bit of sheen in them. Still got some nice colouring in there, and you just mix it up. So I'm just taking one reasonable size feather, and I'm just going to trim away the fluff here. And I'm going to take my hackle pliers and catch it in at the tip. And I'll probably want to do 2 or 3 turns, and you can just work out where you want your turns to end based off how long the fibres you want. Just going to trim away the tip, so I'm left with the tiny triangle there to tie that in. I'll come in and catch that in behind the bead with a couple of turns, make sure it's nice and firm, and then no different than doing any other soft tackle. I'm just going to do 2 or 3 turns around this directly behind the bead to chew it all up. Come in and catch it with the thread. couple of turns, tighten it up, and then I'm just going to go directly in and whip finish directly behind this bead with 2 or 3 turns, pull that nice and firm. Alright, and then trim away trim away my thread, and then that stem can just pop off. And there we've got a Heron and Starling, and you can play around with different types of materials. You can use the same technique as I said with turkey or goose, and therefore get some different types of materials involved. You could try different type of hackle materials, but by and large, that's my Heron and Starling. All right. Hopefully, if you try it, it works for you, and if it does, let me know. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Take care, tight lines.